In the heart of medieval France, a project destined to defy time took shape. It was 1220, and work on a cathedral would continue for generations. Whoever started it knew he'd never see it finished. He was building for his children's children, and that was enough for him. That way of thinking seems to have disappeared for centuries, yet recently it has reappeared in a Polish camp, and its shadow stretches all the way to Rome. At the end of this video, you will have two pieces of news that no one has ever put side by side. Let's start with history, because it helps us understand everything else. For centuries, in Europe, very poor peoples built cathedrals that we couldn't even imagine today. Chartres, Cologne, Milan, construction sites that lasted decades, sometimes centuries. Entire cities taxed themselves. Farmers transported stone. Craftsmen worked on capitals that no one would ever see up close. It wasn't economically efficient. In fact, from an accounting standpoint, it was madness. But those companies believed that the most important thing deserved the greatest thing. The sacred sign had to be visible from afar. It had to dominate the landscape, visible even before entering the city. It was a declaration. This is where what truly matters lives. Then, slowly, that logic reversed. In recent decades, sacred buildings have become a budget problem. Maintenance costs, few worshippers, spaces in need of conversion. And we come to today with two stories that tell the story of two opposing worlds. The first comes from a Polish village whose name, until yesterday, no one knew. It's called Konotopy, and it's located near Torun. And there, on August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption, a 55.5-meter tall statue of the Virgin Mary will be blessed. To give you an idea, we're talking about a height comparable to an 18-story building. It's the tallest Marian statue in Europe and the second tallest in the world. Only one other surpasses it, the one in the Philippines, which reaches 98 meters. But in the entire European continent, there is nothing similar. Work began in March 2025. The estimated cost is approximately 100 million zloty, or almost 23 million euros. And here's the detail many have overlooked, that money doesn't come from the church. It's all paid for by a private individual, businessman Roman Karkosik, one of the richest in the country, along with his wife. A 75-year-old man who, with his fortune, could have done anything: buy, invest, multiply. Instead, he chose to leave a Marian sign in the middle of the countryside, visible for miles, which will bring him no profit. Local authorities hope it will become a pilgrimage site and bring development to the area. This too must be said. In fairness, alongside devotion, there's an economic rationale. And there are those in Poland who are questioning the project, deeming it disproportionate, and those who would have preferred the money spent on charitable causes. It's a legitimate criticism, and it deserves to be reported. But the stark fact remains. In 2026, someone in Europe decided it was worth erecting such a sign, and they did it with their own money. Now let's move 1,200 kilometers and change the scenery completely. Let's go to Rome, to Via della Scrofa, a few steps from the Pantheon. There stands a building dating back to the 15th century, the Domus Internazionale Paolo VI. For years it served as a residence for the clergy, and in 2013 it became world famous. Not just any palace then, a place with 5 centuries of history behind it, in the heart of papal Rome, a stone's throw from the places every pilgrim passes through. It was there that Pope Francis, newly elected, returned in person to settle his room bill, a gesture that made headlines and is still remembered by many. Well, that house will no longer house priests. The Holy See's financial statement for 2025 confirmed this change. The building will be transformed into a 4-star hotel. It will be granted a long-term concession to a private operator who will renovate and manage it. Estimates suggest an annual income of approximately 5 million euros for the Vatican. The document specifies that the necessary authorizations have already been obtained. And here comes the part that has most struck those who follow these events, because the clerics who live there have not remained silent. Cardinals emeritus, bishops, former nuncios, and monsignors residing there wrote to the Secretariat of State and then directly to Leo XIV, asking that the project be halted. Their letters, the Italian press reports, did not change the course of events. The plan is moving forward and is now in its final stages. There's also an almost ironic detail that emerged recently. It seems that at an earlier stage, there had been discussion about making it a 5-star organization and that the choice fell on a 4-star one for reasons of image and credibility. A minor detail, certainly, but it says something about the type of discussion that took place around that building and the criteria by which certain decisions are made. It must be stated precisely, because accuracy matters here. This is not a deconsecrated church or a place of worship. It is a privately owned property, used as accommodation. And the economic reasons exist and are understandable. The Vatican has struggling budgets, a pension fund to support, and real estate assets that must generate income so as not to burden the faithful. Those who defend the operation say exactly this: better a property that earns 5 million a year than a loss-making structure maintained out of habit. This is a serious matter, one that can't be dismissed with a joke. Administration isn't a sin, and the Church has a duty to manage its assets well. But that's why those two pieces of news, placed side by side, have a certain effect. They arrived at the same time, and they go in two opposite directions. In a Polish camp, a private individual spends 23 million to erect a sign that will yield him nothing. In Rome, a historic building is repurposed to produce 5 a year. On the one hand, the logic of giving, which built cathedrals without ever seeing them finished. On the other, the logic of management, which requires everything to sustain itself. And history, as we know, never repeats itself exactly. But here, the rhyme is impossible not to hear. These are the same two logics that have been competing in Europe for centuries. Medieval cathedrals arose from the first. The reconversion of sacred buildings, which has been ongoing for decades throughout the West, belongs to the second. Neither, it must be said, is inherently illegitimate. The real question is, which of the two, in the long run, leaves more faith behind? I won't give you my answer, because everyone has to make their own minds up about this. I've given you the facts: 55 meters in Poland, 4 stars in Rome, and the reasons on both sides. What's certain is that 100 years from now, that statue will still be there, in the middle of the fields, visible to passers-by. And anyone who looks at it will wonder what the people of our time really believed. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.